welcome to the first week of the third 9 weeks. Let's get started on classroom management. Quoting Dr. Wong, who I also mentioned last week, classroom management is not discipline. Instead, when you look at classroom management, you're looking at the process where teachers and schools create and maintain appropriate behavior of students in the classroom setting. I know when you hear classroom management, some people initially think discipline. What to do if someone talks, or what to do if someone doesn't have their materials for the day, but we're not talking about discipline. Dr. Wong says the number one problem in classrooms is not discipline. It's the lack of procedures and routines. So let's look at the difference between discipline and procedures. Discipline concerns how students behave. Procedures concern how things are done. Discipline has penalty and rewards, but procedures have no penalty or rewards. It's just something you expect students to do and teachers to do. From day one in the classroom, rules and procedures need to be set down. They need to be understood. And so that's why your first day of school and a lot of your classrooms might feel the same. You're just going from class to class to hear about rules and procedures. Next week, I'm actually going to have you work on what you think your first day of school rules and procedures should look like. Dr. Wong has a simple 3-step approach to explaining procedures to your students. You need to, number one, explain. State, explain, model, and demonstrate the procedure. If you want your students to line up outside class before they enter, then take them outside and show them how to line up before they enter. Next, rehearse. Rehearse and practice the procedure under your supervision. When we are in school full-time, you guys know my classroom is like in the corner of the building. So I actually will walk students down to their lab. We usually choose the furthest lab, which is Teaching Careers or Diesel, and we will practice, we will rehearse walking from the Diesel lab or the Teaching Careers lab all the way to my classroom within that 4 minutes of the bell, so that students can show me and I can show them what's expected of them in that 4-minute time. Next, we have reinforce. Reteach, rehearse, practice, and reinforce the classroom procedure until it becomes a habit or routine. If you get back from a break and students seem to have fallen off a little bit, then now's a good time to reteach and reinforce. There are going to be times where you have to discipline or reinforce, but there are some good ways to do it. Number one, there's 2 different types of reinforcement. There's positive and negative. In positive reinforcement, you're giving a reward following a desired behavior. So it could be something like, if we follow the rules all week, or you all come to class every day with your assignments here on time, then on Friday, I'm going to have candy for you. Or on Friday, we're going to play a review game. So that's positive reinforcement. You're giving a reward. There's also negative reinforcement. That's where there's a punishment following an undesired behavior. So every day this week, we've had at least one student arrive without their materials. Therefore, on Friday, we are going to have a quiz. Or, hey, Mr. Student over there, I noticed you didn't bring your materials every day. So therefore, while the rest of your peers are playing a review game, you're going to have to take notes over the last chapter. Sometimes you're not going to want to make those statements because it can kind of interrupt the flow of your classroom. So there's a lot of nonverbal ways to enforce discipline. I don't know what that's going to look like with masks on, but it can be eyebrows raised, it can be smiles, it can be frowns, it can be that teacher glare that we're so good at. It doesn't have to disturb the class while they're working. Body language can also speak volumes. So just walking over to a student and tapping their desk. You may have had teachers in the past who have like a little card, maybe it has a red stop sign. So you're walking over and setting it on a student's desk and telling them stop what you're doing. So there are ways to discipline without disrupting the class. And that should be your goal. You don't want to affect all of the other learners based on one child's behavior. I mentioned that your first day of school, you sit through every teacher telling you all of their rules, which can be a little bit overwhelming. And frankly, you just don't listen to them. And it's hard to remember which class has which rule. And so when you as a teacher are setting your rules for the classroom, you really should have no more than 3 to 5 rules. They have to be simple and they have to be short. Make sure they're accurately posted in your classroom and in your syllabus, maybe even in your Google Classroom. And make sure these rules are telling students what to do, not what not to do. In theory, classroom management sounds like it should be pretty simple. As a teacher, I set out my expectations, the students follow. Does that always happen? But your goal as a teacher isn't that your rules are followed and that you have a well-managed classroom. Your goals are that you're an effective teacher. And if you're an effective teacher, then your classroom management is going to work. And you can walk by and see an effective teacher versus an ineffective teacher. In an effective classroom, students are working. They're engaged, they're paying attention, or they're doing their work. Teacher tells students objectives of the lessons. They don't just say, know everything in this chapter, right? They're telling you what you're going to learn each day. In my class, I know when you guys walk in now, I don't know if you've noticed above the date where I also list the quote that some of you said you don't like, or that aren't that great, you're free to write your own. But anyways, if you look on the top of where I have the date and the quote, and I usually have who the teachers are that day, it actually says, what are we learning? And so an effective classroom, if a administrator walks in or another student walks in and says, hey, what are we learning today? You as a student should be able to know if you're in an effective classroom. Next, there's not wasted time, confusion, or disruption. So we will work on this when you guys teach again, but that's what I talked with some of you about transitioning. So when you're transitioning from one activity to another, there's not this wasted time where students can kind of start talking and we don't know what we're doing next. So there's no wasted time. There's always steps as to what we're going to be doing next. And again, when some of you taught, I talked about how you could do that. So maybe that means you have to have materials ready beforehand. And then lastly, in an effective classroom or with an effective teacher, the teacher practices procedures until they become routines and they know how to bring class to attention. I'm sure some of you have seen or you had teachers in the past that had a way to get all of their students kind of back on track.
We are Miss Rosenberg's class, and we are going to show you some of our attention getters and celebrations.
Are you ready?
Yes, we are.
Hey!
But can you let me go?
We started at the bottom.
Now our whole team's here.
We're all the way up.
Nothing can stop us. We're all the way up.
Catch us being awesome.
How about that?
Who let the dogs out?
Woo, woo, woo.
Cheese sticks.
Real good.
Peanut butter.
Jelly time.
Last night we took a nap.
But today we bounce back.
Less talking.
More working.
All set?
You bet.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
2 thumbs.
To yourself.
Hands are ready? Give me 1. Give me 2. Give me 3. Break it out. Don't abuse it.
Or we don't use it.
Awesome. Talk.
When it's time to talk.
Play.
When it's time to play.
Have fun.
When it's time to have fun.
But work.
When it's time to work.
Excellent job. Stand up. Push your chairs. Let's give ourselves 4. Ready, go.
1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1.
Let's give ourselves a whoop whoop. Ready, go.
Whoop, whoop.
Let's give ourselves a whoosh dab. Ready, go. Whoosh. You guys are so
Amazing.
Let's give ourselves an oh yeah. Ready, go.
Boom. Oh, yeah.
I tell all my students.
Tuck it in. Tuck it out. Break us out. Nay, 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 nay.
One more time.
Nay, 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 nay.
And freeze. All set?
You bet.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Eyes are
Forward.
voices
Off.
Shirts are
Tucked in.
like a
Boss.
All set?
You bet.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's look at the cameraman. Give him a triple whoosh. Ready, go.
Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Thanks for watching.
Now that's obviously an effective teacher. She had her students' respect and attention, and that probably took a lot of rehearsal and reinforcement. Let me give you some other examples of call and responses that you might use, and you might be able to teach your students a little bit more quickly. And these you use in the high school as well. I often use the clap once if you hear me, clap twice if you hear me, if I have to get attention. I've used it with teachers too at our teacher meetings.
Hello and welcome to Little Learners. In today's video, I wanted to go through some call and responses you can use with your class to get their attention. Sometimes when children are working or in an early years setting where they are very busy and all scattered and very loud, it can be hard to grab their attention so that you can talk to them. But these are some easy ways you can do just that. So first of all, I'm going to go through some chants that you can use, things that you say and then the children respond to by saying something else. And then at the end, I'll go through a few other things that you can do as well. Now, of course, the whole point of this is that when the children respond to what you're saying, they then stop what they're doing and listen to you. So in call and response, we have the teacher and what the teacher says, and we have the students and what they respond back. Hocus pocus. Everybody focus. Listen up, listen up. Attention, attention. Macaroni cheese. Everybody freeze. Ding dong. Hello. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. 1, 2, 3, looking at me. 1, 2, looking at you. So aside from using chants, there are a few other things you can do to get children's attention as well, and it's a good idea to mix all of these up so children aren't hearing the same ones all the time. So the first thing you can do is use music. Usually I would have a wind chime for this, but I don't have one right now, so I'm just going to edit the sound in post. So the teacher rings the wind chime, and the children respond by putting their fingers up in the air and wiggling them. You can of course use lots of different instruments for this depending on what you might have in your classroom. Bells work really well. Anything that is not a really, really big sound, something that is quite calm, like a wind chime, like some jingly bells, or a nice little strum of a guitar. In certain situations, you don't need to use any sound at all. You can just get the children to copy what you're doing. So you'll need to set this up as an expectation, obviously, like all of these call and responses, but doing something as simple as just putting your finger on your nose and waiting for the children to notice what you're doing and to do the same. You can then call on the children who are doing it and say, "Thank you very much, well done you," and then the other children will start to realise what they're supposed to be doing. You can obviously do other things like putting your hands on your head, really anything you want to use with the children, just make sure that they know what you're doing. And of course, this would be no call and response video without including clapping. So for example, the teacher claps a rhythm, and the children respond by copying. Now it's really important to mix these up. Don't always use the same rhythm because it gets boring and children just end up not hearing it anymore. So of course you can do something like this. And the children respond by doing the same.
While this is a form of classroom management, your children are also engaged, and that's really what's important. As a teacher, we love our students, we love our children, and it is important that we make it evident to them. Another thing that Dr. Wong talks about is his philosophy of love and logic. And so he wants to give children the choice and the freedom to make mistakes. There's the equal balance of consequence and empathy. That replaces punishment whenever it's possible. A child has to take responsibility of his or her actions. And when a child feels respected and feels comfortable, then they will take that responsibility. The student should always be required to do more thinking than the adult, and the child is always left with the feeling that he or she has some control. And so when you outline your expectations for the classroom, then your student's always going to know that. They have to know what your expectations are. You know this with child development. If you tell a child, you know better than that, but they don't really know better than that, you're not going to see much change. But if a child knows what is expected of them, then they're going to own up to the fact that they might have done something that is not correct. So there are 3 rules in this philosophy of love and logic. Number 1, use enforceable limits. Don't tell kids how to run their lives. Instead, tell them how you are going to run yours. Second, provide choices within the limits. Offer choices to students that you can deal with. If a student is having trouble focusing, give them a choice. Would you like to go stand and pace in the back of the room? Would you like to squeeze this ball? Sometimes I say, would you like to just go take a walk, go to the restroom, go to the water fountain? Give them a choice. You're still going to follow your rules. So if that means that they have to have their agenda book signed, fine, but give a student a choice. And then last, apply consequences with empathy. When consequences are applied with empathy, the child has an opportunity to build a thought process of the mistake. And so you're showing that you do care. You understand that this was tough, but here's what has to happen because of my expectations. As a teacher, you want to teach. You want your children to learn. You guys put a lot of time in the activities that you do for your students. You don't want to spend your entire day disciplining. I know I don't want to spend my entire day disciplining. And so there are ways to control the amount of time that you're disciplining. You have to build positive relationships with your students. They have to respect you and appreciate you and know you. You have to set enforceable limits, though, through enforceable statements. Share control. Maybe on the first day, come up with some rules that the students want. Or I have seen teachers who have had students write like a student institution, but you want everyone on board in the classroom. There should be interventions that stop undesirable behaviors, but avoid the need for consequences and try to delay consequences. Give students a chance. And again, it really comes down to they need to respect you and they need to know what their expectations are. And again, in theory, this all sounds pretty reasonable, but students are going to try to push your buttons. So let's say I'm the student and you're the teacher and you told me that if I can't turn in my work or if I don't turn in my work, I can't go out for recess. So as a student, I might say, that's stupid. You're mean. Other kids just get to go because their teachers are nice. I hate you. This sucks. I'm telling my mom, you don't like me. What are you going to say as a teacher? You're not going to fight back. You're not going to say, I'm not mean. Smile. Say, nice try. Maybe say something like, thanks for sharing. I bet it feels that way. I bet you're frustrated. I'm going to listen to you, though, as soon as your voice is as calm as mine. And then walk away. You may have to have some examples of responses ready to go, right? You might want to practice them. You might want to memorize them, maybe even write them down. So rather than saying to a student, you are not going to talk to me that way, say something like, I will be glad to discuss this with you as soon as the arguing stops. And rather than, you need to start respecting me, I will be happy to do nice things for you as soon as I feel respected and helped. Remember, classroom management isn't about discipline. It's about creating a setting in which you have the appropriate behavior and the desired behavior from your students and from yourself. So what will your classroom management strategy be? All right, so this week for this seminar class, I do have this video, and then I have a Google form that I want you to complete so you can use the slideshow that I used in this video to answer the questions. I will attach that to the Google form. At the very end, I do ask you, what will your classroom management strategy be? If you were to be asked in an interview, how would you respond? And remember, you're not going to say, well, here's my rules. It's not just about rules, and it's not just about discipline. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns about this or anything, and make it a great week.